In a Senate hearing that simmered with underlying tension and quickly boiled over into a full-blown verbal melee, Senator John Kennedy positioned himself squarely in the eye of the storm, his presence a stabilizing force amid the brewing chaos. The grand chamber, with its vaulted ceilings that seemed to amplify every heated word, its walls lined with rich mahogany panels that had witnessed countless political battles, and the solemn American flag draped behind the elevated dais, where committee members held court, set the stage for what would become an unforgettable confrontation. Senator Patty Murray, a Democrat known for her no-nonsense approach, but today channeling a more aggressive fervor, wasted no time in launching her offensive. She transformed what was intended as a straightforward examination of Department of Justice DOJ funding into a scorching indictment, hurling allegations of rampant chaos, deep-seated corruption, and brazen disregard for the rule of law at the heart of the DOJ's operations. Her voice, sharp and unyielding, cut through the air like a prosecutor's closing argument, leaving little room for rebuttal as she interrupted, overrode, and dominated the discourse before Kennedy could fully articulate his thoughts. Kennedy, with his trademark Southern drawl that carried the weight of wisdom honed from years in the political arena, remained unflappable. He didn't recoil or raise his voice in retaliation. Instead, he met the onslaught with a composure that spoke volumes about his character. It all ignited when Murray, leaning forward with intensity, rattled off a comprehensive list of grievances, whistleblower complaints that painted a picture of systemic dysfunction, purported violations of court orders that suggested a deliberate flouting of judicial authority, and the controversial dismissal of a former DOJ attorney who, according to the claims, was ousted simply for upholding the truth in legal proceedings. The atmosphere in the room thickened with aides scribbling notes, furiously journalists poised with recorders at the ready, and fellow senators exchanging glances that ranged from supportive nods to skeptical raises of eyebrows. Murray's interrogation was pointed and accusatory from the outset, her primary query slicing to the core. Would Senator John Kennedy unequivocally affirm that the DOJ under the current administration would steadfastly adhere to all court orders without exception or evasion? Let's plunge headfirst into the heart of this exchange, dissecting the moments that defined the early skirmishes. Murray, drawing from recent developments that had captured media attention, referenced a protected whistleblower complaint filed by a former DOJ attorney. This document accused senior leadership within the DOJ of defying court directives through tactics including a lack of candor, intentional delays that bordered on obstruction, and the dissemination of disinformation designed to mislead judicial bodies. Furthermore, the complaint alleged that the whistleblower's termination was a direct reprisal for their commitment to transparency and honesty in court interactions. These allegations are profoundly troubling. Murray declared, her words echoing with a mix of outrage and determination. She acknowledged Kennedy's potential reluctance to delve into specifics of an ongoing case, but pressed him nonetheless. Can you at least confirm your agreement that this administration must follow court orders? Kennedy, seizing a brief window amid the verbal barrage, responded with clarity and conviction. Senator, we will follow court orders. The entire administration is committed to that principle. However, the complexities arise primarily in the district courts scattered throughout the country. These venues often issue rulings that conflict or require higher-level clarification. And that's precisely how we ensure compliance, by pursuing resolutions all the way to the United States Supreme Court when necessary. His explanation was logical, rooted in the intricacies of the federal judicial system, but Murray showed no inclination to absorb or engage with it. Instead, she interjected swiftly, steering the conversation toward additional questions she deemed urgent, her interruptions a clear tactic to maintain control and prevent Kennedy from expanding on his points. The hearing room alive with the hum of anticipation and the occasional rustle of papers witnessed this dynamic play out in real time. Kennedy adjusting his glasses with a gesture that conveyed thoughtful deliberation rather than discomfort, prepared to elaborate further. But Murray's persistence knew no bounds. She circled back to the whistleblower's accusations, demanding that Kennedy pledge to halt any conduct resembling what was alleged defiance, delay disinformation within the DOJ. "I'm not going to engage in discussions about unproven allegations," Kennedy countered firmly, yet politely. "What you're referencing is part of a pending whistleblower lawsuit that surfaced on the eve of a significant hearing. My focus is on facts and due process." Murray, undeterred, pushed for a simple yes or no affirmation that such behaviors would not be tolerated, her voice rising in pitch as if to underscore the stakes. Kennedy, embodying a blend of loyalty and principle, responded with unwavering support for his colleagues. "I will always stand by the dedicated professionals at the DOJ who exemplify integrity and commitment. They are among the finest individuals I know, and I trust their judgment implicitly." This declaration hung in the air, a testament to his steadfastness, but Murray forged ahead, her limited time allocation fueling her rapid-fire delivery. The exchange shifted gears as she delved into another contentious issue, the DOJ's sudden cancellation of over 300 public safety grants. These funds, awarded through what she described as a rigorous, fair, and apolitical process, supported vital initiatives such as investigating and prosecuting drug trafficking networks, providing aid to foster care children who had endured abuse or neglect, enhancing access to forensic examinations for sexual assault victims, and bolstering efforts to address violent crimes. "These cancellations are senseless," Murray asserted, highlighting the real-world repercussions organizations forced to lay off staff and curtail essential services. Kennedy, listening attentively without a trace of defensiveness, waited for his turn to address the concern. When it came, he spoke with a reassuring tone. "Senator, while you may not have been present for earlier discussions, I'll reiterate, we've made targeted cuts amounting to roughly 6% of the total grants. If there's a specific grant you believe should be reinstated, please bring it to my attention directly. I'm more than willing to review it personally. We've already reversed decisions on several grants through our appeals process, and I'm open to collaborating with you to ensure no critical program suffers unnecessarily." His proposal was pragmatic, an invitation to bipartisanship that cut through the partisan fog, but Murray, adhering to her script, moved swiftly to probe deeper. She questioned whether Kennedy was aware that the Community-Based Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative funding was instrumental in curbing violent crime when it was abruptly severed. Affirming his commitment to public safety, Kennedy replied, "Absolutely, we're dedicated to reducing violence in our communities. If a grant aligns with that goal effectively, it deserves support." Murray, not pausing for breath, transitioned to another example: the grant for expanding access to sexual assault forensic examinations. "Were you cognizant that this funding aids in the prosecution of rape and sexual assault cases?" she demanded. Kennedy, maintaining his poise, admitted, "I don't have the granular details on that particular grant at my fingertips, which is why I extend the offer to sit down and discuss it. I would never intentionally undermine programs that protect victims and ensure justice is served. Provide me with the specifics, and my team will prioritize a review." His response was not evasive, but constructive, emphasizing action over rhetoric. As this initial chapter of the hearing unfolded, the contrasts between the two figures sharpened into focus. Murray, driven by a quest for accountability that bordered on theatricality, rushed through her prepared points, her interruptions, a barrier to genuine dialogue. Kennedy, on the other hand, exuded a quiet authority, his responses laced with facts, offers of cooperation, and a refusal to be drawn into speculative debates. The audience, senators from both sides of the aisle, policy experts, and the public tuning in remotely couldn't help but notice how Kennedy's approach transformed potential vulnerabilities into strengths. He wove in relatable analogies, comparing the grant review process to a prudent household manager allocating limited resources to maximize impact, making abstract policy decisions tangible for all. Murray's arrogance manifested in her unwillingness to yield the floor, her questions more akin to statements designed for media clips than inquiries seeking resolution. Yet Kennedy's resilience shone through. He didn't match her volume or velocity, but countered with substance and serenity. When she revisited the whistleblower's dismissal, framing it as evidence of a culture of retaliation, Kennedy reiterated the constraints of ongoing litigation. "We adhere to proper protocols in all personnel matters, and I won't prejudice active cases with premature commentary." His loyalty to his team was palpable, as he affirmed his readiness to run through a wall for those he believed, in a metaphor that underscored his dedication without descending into hyperbole. The room's energy pulsed with the drama of the moment, whispers rippling through the gallery, as observers marveled at Kennedy's command of the situation. He expanded on the broader challenges facing the DOJ, explaining how the patchwork of district court decisions often necessitated appeals to higher courts to achieve uniformity and justice. This wasn't deflection, but education, illuminating the complexities of federal governance for those less versed in its nuances. Murray, sensing perhaps that her momentum was being subtly undermined, intensified her assault, but Kennedy's steady demeanor began to erode the effectiveness of her strategy. His invitations for direct dialogue, "Call me, and we'll sort it out," hung as olive branches in a field of contention, highlighting a path to progress amid the polarization. This opening phase of the hearing, marked by relentless pressure and Kennedy's unyielding poise, laid the groundwork for what would evolve into a masterclass in leadership under duress. He didn't merely survive the initial barrage, he navigated it with grace, turning interruptions into opportunities to demonstrate accountability and openness. As Murray's time wound down in this segment, the narrative had already taken shape, a senator more focused on spectacle than substance versus one committed to facts over fury. Kennedy's presence, commanding yet approachable, served as a reminder that true public service thrives on integrity, not intimidation. The stage was now set for the deeper dives to come, with Kennedy firmly established as the anchor in this turbulent sea of scrutiny, his every word a step toward clarity in a clouded debate. The hearing, far from routine, had transformed into a riveting display of democratic discourse, where one man's resolve illuminated the path forward. As the Senate hearing pressed forward into its second phase, the intensity showed no signs of waning, with Senator John Kennedy now shifting gears from a defensive posture to one of assertive command, his sharp intellect and unyielding resolve taking center stage in the ongoing battle of words. The chamber, still humming with the residual energy from the initial clashes, watched as Kennedy, no longer content to merely weather the storm of interruptions, began to dismantle Senator Patty Murray's accusations with precision and poise, turning the tide through a masterful display of facts, logic, and unwavering commitment to transparency. Murray, undeterred by the subtle shifts in momentum, continued her aggressive line of questioning. But Kennedy's responses grew more proactive, each one a calculated counterpunch that highlighted not only the flaws in her approach, but also his own dedication to principled governance. It was here in this pivotal segment that Kennedy truly began to shine, transforming the hearing from a one-sided interrogation into a balanced dialogue where truth could emerge from the fray. Kennedy, sensing an opening amid Murray's relentless barrage, seized the moment to elaborate on the DOJ's handling of court orders, his voice steady and authoritative as he explained the intricate web of federal judiciary challenges. "Senator, let's be clear about how we operate." He began, his southern accent lending a folksy authenticity to his words. "District courts issue rulings that sometimes conflict across jurisdictions. It's the nature of our system. We comply fully, but when discrepancies arise, we appeal to higher courts, including the Supreme Court, to ensure uniformity and justice for all Americans. This isn't defiance, it's due diligence." His explanation was crisp, devoid of jargon, yet rich in substance, drawing nods from several observers in the room who appreciated the clarity he brought to a complex topic. Murray, however, interjected, before he could finish redirecting to the whistleblower complaint, with renewed vigor accusing the DOJ of fostering an environment of lack of candor and deliberate delay. She demanded specific assurances that such practices would cease immediately, her tone implying that anything less than total capitulation was unacceptable. Undaunted, Kennedy leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking onto Murray's, with a gaze that conveyed both respect for the process and firm disagreement with her tactics. "I won't speculate on allegations tied to a lawsuit that's still unfolding," he replied, his words measured but forceful. "What I can assure you is that the DOJ prioritizes integrity above all. If any misconduct is proven through proper channels, it will be addressed swiftly and decisively. But jumping to conclusions based on unverified claims doesn't serve the public, it undermines the very justice we're sworn to uphold." This rebuttal marked a turning point as Kennedy transitioned from reacting to leading the conversation, using specific examples from past DOJ cases without breaching confidentiality to illustrate how the department had successfully navigated similar controversies in the past, emerging stronger and more accountable. He cited instances where appeals had clarified ambiguous rulings, resulting in policies that better protected communities nationwide, his narrative weaving a tapestry of proactive problem-solving that contrasted sharply with Murray's portrayal of dysfunction. The room's atmosphere thickened as Murray pivoted back to the grant cancellations, her voice rising in indignation as she listed the impacts on programs for drug enforcement, victim support, and violence prevention. "How can you justify cutting funds that directly combat sexual assault and aid abused children?" She pressed her interruptions, now more frantic, as if sensing her grip on the narrative slipping. Kennedy, ever the strategist, waited for a brief lull before delivering a comprehensive response that not only defended the decisions but also extended an olive branch for collaboration. "Senator, these cuts represent a small fraction, about 6% of our overall grants, aimed at eliminating redundancies and ensuring every dollar delivers maximum impact," he explained. "We've already reinstated several through our appeals process after reviews showed their value. Take the forensic exam grant you mentioned. If it's truly essential for prosecuting violent crimes, provide the details, and I'll personally oversee a reevaluation. My door is open. Let's work together to get this right." His offer was genuine, a practical solution that underscored his commitment to bipartisanship and public service. But Murray brushed it aside, moving swiftly to another accusation without acknowledging the gesture. Kennedy's intelligence shone through in these moments as he anticipated Murray's next moves and prepared counters that were both incisive and informative. When she questioned the DOJ's transparency in handling whistleblower protections, he countered with a detailed overview of internal protocols, emphasizing how the department encouraged reporting through safe channels while protecting ongoing investigations from premature disclosure. Transparency isn't about airing every detail in real time, it's about following the law to ensure fair outcomes. He stated his logic impeccable and his delivery compelling. Observers in the gallery murmured in approval, noting how Kennedy's approach educated the audience on the nuances of federal operations, making the abstract tangible through relatable analogies like comparing DOJ oversight to a mechanic fine-tuning an engine for optimal performance. Murray's continued interruptions began to backfire, her arrogance evident in the way she dismissed his explanations as evasions, refusing to engage with the substance he provided. Pushing forward, Kennedy took the initiative to address potential misconceptions head-on, outlining how the DOJ balanced fiscal responsibility with mission-critical needs. "We've turned grants back on when evidence showed they were indispensable," he said, citing anonymized examples of programs restored after stakeholder input. "This isn't arbitrary. It's accountable governance." His words carried a quiet authority, reinforcing his image as a leader who valued results over rhetoric. Murray, attempting to regain control, circled back to the whistleblower's firing, framing it as retaliation, and demanding Kennedy condemn it outright. But Kennedy held firm, his Kian Din, "Unshakable personnel decisions follow rigorous procedures, and I stand by our team's dedication. I won't prejudge a case based on allegations alone. That's not how justice works." This stance not only defended his colleagues, but also highlighted a broader principle: the importance of due process in a system often swayed by political pressures. As the chapter progressed, Kennedy's proactive stance grew more pronounced, with each response building on the last to paint a picture of a DOJ committed to excellence. He delved into the specifics of grant management, explaining how reviews identified inefficiencies that, once corrected, freed resources for higher impact initiatives. For instance, if a violence prevention program demonstrates measurable reductions in crime, it stays funded. Simple as that, he noted, his examples concrete and convincing. Murray's attacks persisted, her questions laced with skepticism about the DOJ's motives, but Kennedy's consistency wore down the assault, his calm demeanor exposing the flaws in her non-listening approach. Spectators watched in fascination as he turned defensive queries into opportunities for enlightenment, discussing how Supreme Court precedents guided their compliance strategies, ensuring the rule of law prevailed. The dynamic between the two senators became a study in contrasts: Murray's hurried, interruptive style versus Kennedy's thoughtful, substantive engagement. He invited further scrutiny, offering to share data on grant outcomes post-hearing, a move that demonstrated confidence in the DOJ's record. "If there's doubt, let's examine the facts together." He proposed his invitation hanging as a challenge to Murray's confrontational tactics. She responded with more demands for immediate concessions, but Kennedy's refusal to be rushed only amplified his stature, portraying him as a guardian of reasoned discourse in a polarized environment. His intelligence was on full display, dissecting complex issues with ease and reassembling them into coherent arguments that resonated beyond the chamber. Kennedy's resolve peaked when Murray accused the DOJ of disinformation in court filings, a charge he met with a pointed rebuttal. "Our submissions are grounded in evidence, and any discrepancies are resolved through the appeals process, not through media trials." His words cut through the noise, reaffirming his commitment to truth, while subtly critiquing the sensationalism that often clouded such proceedings. As interruptions mounted, Kennedy's patience became a weapon, allowing him to highlight Murray's unwillingness to hear out full explanations, which in turn underscored his own dedication to collaborative problem-solving. The hearing's rhythm shifted under his influence, with Kennedy now driving the narrative toward solutions rather than standoffs. In this reactive yet commanding phase, Kennedy exemplified leadership, his sharp arguments, and specific evidence dismantling doubts while building bridges. He spoke of the human stakes communities safer because of well-allocated resources victims supported through effective programs, grounding the debate in real-world impact. Murray's persistence, while tenacious, paled against Kennedy's blend of wit, wisdom, and willpower, her arrogance in not allowing answers only magnifying his strengths. As the segment drew toward its close, Kennedy had not just countered the attacks. He had elevated the discourse, proving that true progress stemmed from facts and mutual respect, not unyielding confrontation. The stage was set for deeper revelations, with Kennedy firmly in control, his performance a beacon of intelligent, steadfast public service. As the Senate hearing delved deeper into its third phase, Senator John Kennedy masterfully steered the conversation toward the tangible realities of governance, transforming the abstract accusations into opportunities for concrete solutions and demonstrating a profound sense of responsibility that set him apart in the heated arena. The chamber, now thick with the weight of prolonged debate, bore witness to Kennedy's strategic pivot, where he addressed the core issues head-on, focusing on the practical implications of DOJ policies rather than getting mired in the cycle of interruptions and allegations. Murray, maintaining her combative stance, continued to launch pointed critiques, but Kennedy's responses, infused with sincerity and logical rigor, began to illuminate the path toward resolution, highlighting a leadership style rooted in collaboration and accountability. This segment of the hearing evolved into a true battle for truth, where Kennedy's commitment to facts and fairness clashed against the backdrop of partisan posturing, ultimately showcasing his ability to bridge divides through thoughtful engagement. Kennedy, building on the momentum from his earlier counters, directed attention to the specifics of the grant cancellations that Murray had so vehemently highlighted, his voice carrying a tone of earnest problem-solving as he invited deeper scrutiny. "Senator, let's talk brass tacks about these grants," he said, leaning into the microphone with a focus that commanded attention. "We've got programs out there making a real difference, fighting drug traffickers, helping kids in foster care who've been through hell, expanding forensic tools to nail down sexual assault cases. If cuts have hit the wrong spots, that's not the goal. Tell me which ones, and we'll dive in together." His words were not defensive but proactive, extending a genuine offer for direct cooperation that underscored his willingness to transcend party lines for the sake of effective public service. Murray, however, persisted in her aggressive questioning, demanding immediate explanations for why such vital funding had been axed without apparent justification, her interruptions aiming to keep Kennedy on the back foot. With characteristic poise, Kennedy elaborated on the review process, providing a clear step-by-step breakdown that demystified the decisions without evasion. "Our team conducted a thorough audit to ensure taxpayer dollars are used efficiently, no waste, no overlap." He explained his southern drawl, adding a layer of approachable authenticity. "That 6% trim was targeted at redundancies, but we've got flexibility built in. Just last month, we reinstated funding for a violence prevention initiative after fresh data showed its impact on community safety. If similar cases exist here, let's review them. My staff is ready to sit down with yours anytime." This response highlighted Kennedy's emphasis on evidence-based governance, using real-world examples to illustrate how the DOJ adapted to new information, fostering trust through transparency. Murray countered by citing specific hardships organizations laying off staff, services for abuse victims being curtailed. Her voice laced with urgency, but Kennedy met her concerns with empathy and action-oriented proposals, refusing to let the dialogue devolve into mere finger-pointing. The battle intensified as Murray pressed on the whistleblower's claims once more, attempting to tie them to broader patterns of alleged misconduct within the DOJ, including disinformation and delays in court proceedings. Kennedy, ever vigilant in upholding due process, responded with a balanced perspective that prioritized truth over speculation. "Look, Senator, allegations like these deserve serious attention, but they must go through the proper channels," he stated firmly. "We've got mechanisms in place to investigate and correct any issues, internal reviews, independent audits. Rushing to judgment based on a lawsuit filed at the 11th hour doesn't get us closer to the facts. It muddies the waters. His reasoning was impeccable, drawing on principles of fairness that resonated with the room's more neutral observers, who nodded in quiet agreement as he outlined how such processes had resolved past disputes, effectively leading to stronger departmental integrity. Shifting gears to emphasize collaboration, Kennedy proposed a hands-on approach to resolving the grant disputes, his sincerity evident in every word. If that forensic exam grant is crucial for prosecuting rapists and supporting survivors, let's not debate it here. Send over the details, and I'll champion its review personally. He offered, his eyes scanning the committee with an inclusive gaze. This isn't about winning arguments. It's about getting results for the folks back home who rely on these programs. Murray, undaunted, fired back with questions about awareness and intent, behind the cuts suggesting a lack of foresight. But Kennedy's replies were laced with accountability, admitting where knowledge gaps existed while committing to fill them. I may not have every grant's fine print memorized, but that's why we have teams and processes, and why I'm inviting you to the table to ensure nothing slips through, he said, his humility paired with resolve creating a powerful contrast to Murray's unyielding critique. As the exchange unfolded, Kennedy's leadership style came into sharper relief, marked by a relentless focus on practical solutions amid the storm of accusations. He delved into the human elements behind the policies, recounting anonymized stories of how reinstated grants had saved lives. Communities pulling back from the brink of violence, victims finding justice through enhanced resources. These aren't just line items on a budget sheet. They're lifelines. He emphasized, his passion tempered by pragmatism. Murray's continued interruptions, while persistent, began to highlight her own rigidity as she dismissed his offers as insufficient, opting instead for more demands that echoed her initial tirade. Kennedy, however, used these moments to reinforce his message of unity, suggesting joint briefings or working groups to address ongoing concerns, a strategy that positioned him as the bridge builder in a divided chamber. The room's dynamics shifted subtly under Kennedy's influence, with aides exchanging notes, and senators from both sides showing signs of engagement, some leaning forward, others murmuring in discussion. When Murray revisited the court order compliance issue, framing it as a systemic failure, Kennedy countered with a detailed exposition on the federal judiciary's structure. District courts vary widely in their interpretations. That's democracy in action, but it means we sometimes need the Supreme Court to unify the law. He explained, his logic cutting through the complexity like a knife. We've followed every order to the letter, appealing only when necessary to protect broader principles. This ensures justice isn't piecemeal, but consistent across the nation. His articulation educated the audience, transforming the hearing into a forum for understanding rather than mere confrontation, all while maintaining a tone of respect that Murray's approach often lacked. Kennedy's authenticity peaked in moments of direct appeal, where he expressed unwavering support for his DOJ colleagues amid the swirling allegations. These are dedicated public servants, putting it all on the line every day. I'd back them through thick and thin because they've earned it. With their track record, he declared his loyalty a shield against unfounded attacks. Murray pressed for disavowals, but Kennedy's steadfastness only amplified his credibility, portraying him as a leader who valued people over politics. He wove in broader themes of responsibility, noting how the DOJ's mission extended to safeguarding vulnerable populations from foster kids to crime victims, and how grant adjustments were part of that stewardship. Throughout this chapter, the stark differences in leadership emerged vividly: Murray's combative, headline-seeking style versus Kennedy's collaborative, truth-driven ethos. He consistently redirected energy toward actionable steps, offering to personally intervene in grant reviews and encouraging bipartisan input to refine policies. Let's turn this hearing into progress. Call my office, and we'll roll up our sleeves." He urged his invitations genuine and repeated chipping away at the adversarial wall. Murray's responses, while sharp, increasingly appeared isolated against Kennedy's inclusive framework, her arrogance in overriding his points only underscoring his patience and depth. As the phase neared its conclusion, Kennedy had firmly established himself as the champion of truth. His sincere and reasoned replies not only defending the DOJ, but also inspiring a vision of governance where cooperation triumphed over conflict. The battle for truth raged on, but Kennedy's approach, rooted in facts, empathy, and responsibility, lit the way forward, proving that real leadership meant solving problems, not perpetuating them. The hearing, enriched by his contributions, promised even greater insights in the chapters to come, with Kennedy's influence growing ever stronger in the face of unrelenting scrutiny. As the Senate hearing reached its crescendo, Senator John Kennedy stood as a pillar of unyielding resolve, his performance in the face of relentless scrutiny, transforming the charged atmosphere into a profound testament to principled leadership. The grand chamber, its high ceilings and polished mahogany walls, reverberating with the echoes of a battle fought through words, bore witness to a closing act, where Kennedy not only deflected the barrage of accusations from Senator Patty Murray, but elevated the discourse to a lesson in integrity, patience, and public service. Murray's aggressive approach, marked by rapid-fire interruptions and a hunger for dramatic soundbites, wilted against Kennedy's calm, fact-driven responses, which radiated a quiet authority that commanded the room. This final chapter crystallized Kennedy's dominance, delivering a powerful message about the values that define true leadership and offering an enduring takeaway for all who observed the electrifying proceedings. Kennedy, seizing the waning moments of the hearing, leaned into the microphone with a presence that blended gravitas with accessibility, his southern drawl carrying a weight that silenced the murmurs in the gallery. "Senator, we've gone round and round on Grant's court orders and allegations." He began, his voice steady and resonant, cutting through the lingering tension like a beacon. "Let's cut to the chase. The DOJ's mission is to serve the American people, not to be a punching bag for political points. If a grant's been cut that's hurting folks, whether it's fighting drug traffickers or helping victims of violence, I'll roll up my sleeves and fix it. If there's a process that needs tightening, I'm all in. My commitment is to justice, and I'll stand by that every day." His words were not just a defense, but a declaration, a call to refocus on what mattered. Real outcomes for real people, not the theatrics of a hearing room. Murray, clinging to her combative script, made one final attempt to regain the upper hand, circling back to the whistleblower complaint with renewed fervor. She demanded Kennedy disavow alleged misconduct claims of lack of candor and deliberate delay and pledge immediate reforms. Kennedy, unfazed, met her challenge with a response that balanced principle with pragmatism. "I'm not here to play judge and jury on a pending lawsuit," he said firmly, his eyes scanning the committee with unwavering confidence. "What I will say is this: the DOJ operates on integrity. If there's evidence of wrongdoing, we'll root it out through proper channels, audits, investigations, the works. But leaping to conclusions without facts doesn't serve justice. It undermines it." His refusal to be baited into speculation drew subtle nods from neutral senators who appreciated his commitment to due process in a climate often swayed by headlines. The contrast between the two figures was stark and undeniable. Murray's approach, driven by a quest for viral moments, seemed increasingly hollow against Kennedy's focus on substance. He pivoted to the human stakes, recounting how DOJ programs had changed lives, communities lifted from the grip of violence, survivors of abuse finding justice through supported initiatives. "These aren't just budget lines," he said, his voice tinged with passion. "They're lifelines for folks who need us most. If we've missed the mark on a grant, Senator, send me the details. I'll sit down with you, and we'll make it right together." His invitation, repeated with unwavering sincerity, was a masterstroke exposing Murray's reluctance to engage collaboratively as a weakness. Her interruptions, once a weapon, now felt repetitive, her arrogance in dismissing his offers highlighting her preference for confrontation over cooperation. As the hearing neared its end, Kennedy delivered a reflection that encapsulated the day's deeper lesson, his words resonating with a clarity that reached beyond the chamber's walls. Leadership isn't about who can yell the loudest or land the sharpest jab. He said, his tone a blend of resolve and wisdom that captivated the audience. It's about listening to the other side, digging into the facts, and acting with integrity, even when the pressure's on. We don't build trust by tearing each other down. We build it by working together, by putting the truth first and the politics last. That's what the folks back home expect, and that's what I'm here to deliver. This message, simple yet profound, struck a chord, reminding everyone present that governance thrives on mutual respect and accountability, not division and drama. The lesson was clear. In an era where outrage often overshadows reason, integrity and patience are the cornerstones of meaningful progress. Kennedy's performance was more than surviving a tough interrogation. It redefined the debate. He rose above Murray's attacks, turning the hearing into a moment of inspiration. Observers saw his composure, his refusal to trade fury for facts, as proof of true public service. By reaffirming his open-door policy on grants, he showed commitment to people over politics. Murray's sharpness faded, while Kennedy's calm authority cemented his legacy as a leader who commanded respect. The lesson was clear: integrity, truth, and bridge building are the path to a stronger nation, and real leadership shines brightest under pressure with honor.